Welcome to the Tesla Economist. Please hit the thumbs up and remember to subscribe. You can follow me on Twitter and talk to me on Patreon. Alright, I know some of you were getting a bit tired of hearing about every minor update and speculation I had on the latest Model Y. You have to admit, I have been good not talking about it for a while, but I can't hold back anymore. Now that Tesla are starting to deliver the Austin Model Y to the public, well, the owners are just as excited as us and can't wait to show us all the latest specifications. In the past, I've tried to run pretty much every possible scenario this car and battery might be. Tesla did everything they could to hide it, but we had collected so much data, it wasn't going to take much more until we start to actually be able to get some real facts about this vehicle. Now, firstly, I would like to thank the YouTube channel Spoken Reviews for the great work on getting out these Model Y specs to us so quickly, and being thorough too. I've added a link to his channel in the description, as he really has done a great job here. So let's go through all the new information we have about the car and see if we can draw some inferences. Of course, one of the main things we want to know is the battery size. Now, we'll start off with something that has caused a bit of controversy. We kind of get this new model's identity. In the past, it's been called a Model Y all-wheel drive and standard range Model Y. Well, now apparently it is a Model Y 50D. 50D? Hang on, that sounds like how Tesla used to badge their model variants. The number was an indication of the battery size, and the letter D was for dual motor. Therefore, that might imply that we have a 50 kilowatt-hour Tesla Model Y, yet still capable of 280 miles of range, which is astounding. Now, this does align with some of the battery day math, so it's not too insane to fathom. However, in another one of his videos, he shares his charging experience. He says that 87% took 59 kilowatt hours. So that would mean 100% charge would take the battery to 67.8 kilowatt hours. Now that's about a 68 kilowatt hour increase in battery charge. Therefore, I think that does dismiss our theory on a 50 kilowatt hour battery size. Well, 68 kilowatt hours was exactly about where we'd left our last estimate as to the battery size. So that seems very believable. This was based on the theory that Tesla were using fewer 4680 cells in the battery pack than the ones displayed at Cyber Rodeo. That means Tesla are using 690 cells rather than 828 cells. This would also track with Troy Tesla's estimated energy per 4680 cell at 98 watts. If we multiply that energy capacity with the quantity of cells, well, wouldn't you know, we get 67.6 kilowatt hours compared to our other estimate of 67.8 kilowatt hours. Now, when we're getting numbers that close together, I think we can assume we have found a pretty likely estimate of the battery size. Wow, I think we finally know the battery size of this new vehicle, or at least further confirmation on what we were thinking, increasing the odds significantly. So how does this compare with other Teslas? Well, the Model Y long range gets 330 miles of range with a 75 kilowatt hour usable battery. Now that is the usable battery, not gross battery capacity, which is actually around 82 kilowatt hours, as we're only working with the usable battery for the Model Y, so we need to compare the right metrics. Now it would seem both vehicles are pretty even relative to miles of range per kilowatt hour. Of course, those extra miles of range are that much harder to get, and on top of that, the long range has additional weight too. In other words, I think we can say that the energy density of the new Model Y 4680 cells are not currently as energy dense as 2170 cells. What did I just say? 2170 is actually more energy dense than 4680s? Well, even on battery day, they did tell us it will take a while to get to the levels we were told. 3 years, although next year it will have been that time. I think we meant to wait 3 more years now until we're there. But progress will happen fast once they ramp up the 4680 production. In the meantime, we have these less efficient 4680 cells. Then what's the point of them if they aren't energy dense? Well, the main purpose of the 4680 cell was to actually design a cell and manufacturing process that could make enough cells fast enough to have a chance of sustainable renewable energy future. On top of that, it was also about creating a low-cost way of producing cells that would undercut ICE cars. Energy density was only the next most important after those two, as it's moot if you can't make enough of them affordably, but the energy density will take time to improve, as will the speed of the production line. We have to start somewhere, and this is it, a 270 mile range Model Y with a 68 kilowatt hour battery. Now the YouTuber very much thought that this was going to be upgradable, perhaps from a 50D to a long range 70D or something, and he actually convinced me for a while. Tesla have literally done that in the past. But why would Tesla waste those batteries? Cells sitting there not being used? Well, perhaps the 4680 structural pack does need a minimum amount of cells still for the sheer physics. A larger battery can charge faster and will degrade less. It's more efficient with regenerative braking too, but think about it for a second. Structural battery pack, cell to vehicle integration? You do need the cells as part of that equation. Perhaps for the actual structure of the car, there is a minimum amount of 4680 cells required. Anyway, so perhaps Tesla could have had 10% more cells in the car than they actually needed to achieve this range. Perhaps they could have used dummy cells, but can you imagine the production nightmare of trying to manufacture dummy cells as well? Not worth it. So there could end up being spare cells in the battery there for structure, and perhaps you can pay extra to unlock them for range and performance. FYI, 10% more cells with 4680 might cost less than $500, at least eventually. If that added 50 miles more range, and then you can sell the extra upgrade for $5,000, even if just half of the customers purchased that, then that is a massive profit on those additional cells. However, we did witness the battery being charged and still getting that amount of range, so even if there was a software unlock, it probably wouldn't improve the battery efficiency. Also, on the recent Q1 earnings call, Elon did say, I think, maybe in a nutshell, I think it probably is fair to say that 4680 and Structural Pack will be competitive with the best alternatives later this year, and we think will exceed the best alternatives next year. Elon says it will be competitive with the best alternatives later this year. So does that imply that models earlier this year will not be competitive with the alternatives? That does feel about where we are. So perhaps later this year, we'll see the car produce over 300 miles of range, and significantly more next year. Alright, so I guess it's not the energy density that's going to be that exciting with the 4680 cells to start with. Wow, this cell really is just so complex. The fact it takes this long to get going and evolve with this level of talent, I think it just goes to show that not only what an incredible product this will be, it's going to be next to impossible to replicate. I think what we do get to look forward to is this rapid rate at which these cells will be manufactured. I think the Cybertruck won't be launched until this energy density has improved quite a bit still, but likely next year. But as for the semi-truck, I wouldn't even think about major production until 2024, when the energy density has improved that much more. Now, when the YouTuber visited the charging station, there didn't seem to be any warnings about charging past 90%. This might possibly indicate charging capacity goes to 100%, presumably to zero as well, similar to how an LFP cell charges rather than nickel. This was something I was speculating back at potential specifications of this new Model Y. If it's true, it's really impressive. It would end up meaning that although this Model Y has 50 miles less range than the long range, well, the long range lost 20% of charge, or 66 miles of range, because you need to keep the charge between 10 and 90%. If 4680s are 0 to 100, then that means that this vehicle needs to be charged less regularly than the long range. It would also imply that Tesla have done some pretty major engineering preventing battery degradation. This will be very exciting to find out. It adds a lot of value to the car and the cell. We see the charging speed go in excess of 200 kilowatts, so that is potentially a good sign, and presumably software locked at that rate for now possibly. As there's such new technology, perhaps they want to wear these cars in carefully. Who knows how far ahead Tesla's jumped. Think about the last 5 years or so of R&D and billions of dollars and the best minds on the planet making these cells. If the competition ever get battery cell technology as good as this, it probably won't be until next decade. Tesla can keep this entire thing software limited, and it can still likely stay ahead of the competition for that time. And we also get the weight of the car. Yes, Spoken Reviews was even kind enough to get the Model Y weighed. After removing the weight of the driver and car seats, he claims the weight of the Model Y is 4,225 pounds. Firstly, just some extreme detective work here. The YouTuber ordered the tow package, so perhaps the extra tow bar may have weighed an additional 25 pounds, taking the total weight to maybe 420 tens of pounds? Sounds highly possible, perhaps with a 69 kilowatt hour battery pack too. As if things weren't hard enough for Tesla engineers already, but having to round everything up to the nearest 69 or 420 surely adds even more pressure. Alright, so let's go with 4,200 pounds. Firstly, we can clearly see this is a different weight from the EPA figure we were told. Yes, I told you all those EPA figures didn't add up. Despite how credible you might put the EPA, math is the law, everything else is opinion. The numbers just didn't add up, but it's nice to see we were right, implying we can't rely on a lot of the EPA figures. And how does this compare to the Model Y long-range weight? 163 pounds lighter than the long-range. The long-range battery pack is supposed to weigh around 1,054 pounds, so does that imply the 4680 pack is 891 pounds? The long-range has a battery pack containing a gross 82 kilowatt hour battery. The 4680 version likely has a battery pack around 74 kilowatt hours gross, or about 10% less the size of the 2170. The 4680 battery pack is 15% lighter than the long range, except we're not factoring in the weight saving from the structural battery pack here. I think there may be enough numbers around here to get an idea of how much weight saving the structural battery pack is generating, and potentially the true energy density of these new cells. I will try and see what I can generate and play with some numbers, and will make a video on it if I reach any inferences. Alright, essentially I think this new Model Y is what it is, the start of the 4680 cells. From here on in, the 4680 cells will only get better, more energy dense and faster production. But it sounds like they will become the industry-leading EV cells for energy density early next year. Alright, these initial specifications might not be great, but this is still an exceptional vehicle and still has sufficient range, especially if it can be charged from 0 to 100%. Remember, the main thing about these cells is the ability for them to be produced at incredibly rapid rates. They just need a bit of refining first. Thanks for listening. Please hit the thumbs up and subscribe. You can follow me on Twitter and talk to me on Patreon.